There's been much made about the balloon that floated through Canadian and American airspace over the last couple of weeks. My final analysis on this simply is this: China is saying to us, Shishin Baba, or translated meaning, who's your daddy? That's it. They want average everyday citizens in Canada and the United States, and the world for that matter, to realize they're in charge. That's right. Your politicians, Canadians or Americans, are not running the show. They've sold out to us, and we call the shots from now on. How did it get this far? Simple. China has always had an agenda to rule the world. That's what they're after. Somehow, though, we've softened it. And I think the problem has happened is that we equate the Chinese government, the people that run the show, with average everyday citizens. Granted, there's obviously citizens there who have a very nationalistic view of things and they want China to be in charge, but the majority of them don't. They just want to live their lives. However, the leadership is quite different, and they've gone to great lengths to take control of the world in so many different ways. Let's face it, most of the world's addicted to all the cheap crap China produces. Not only that, there's pharmaceuticals and drugs that China is now solely essentially producing. We're even buying batteries for electric vehicles from them, even though we know they use Uyghurs in basically slave camps to produce these products. And yet the world just consumes it up left, right, and center. Why? Because our politicians have sold out. They're getting an interest from it, whether it be through sex, money, whatever, you name it. They are selling out to the Chinese. The Chinese are flooding the world with fentanyl. They're essentially wiping out or eroding cultures and societies from within. And again, our politicians say nothing. Finally, though, this was it. China said, you know what? We've come far enough. It's sort of like, think of it this way. Your neighbor sleeps with your wife. You walk into the room and suddenly you discover them in bed together. And instead of saying, hey, I was wrong, or feeling embarrassed in any way, he says, hey, make the bed for us. Come on, get to it. And that's what China has essentially said. We are in charge. And what do our politicians do? Oh, they distract us with Russia. That's right, Russia, Russia, Russia. Now, I grant you, Putin is not an amazingly wonderful fellow. I know that. He's a dictator. He's done lots of bad things. I get all that. But Russia is not a threat to the world. How so? Well, other than the nukes that they have, their economic power is very minor. They don't have a lot of power like China does, and they have not infiltrated the world and got their tentacles into every financial means like China has. China is the real threat, not Russia. And now we learned also in the last couple of days that it looks like the Americans blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. That's right, they're the ones who blew up the Russian pipeline. And why would they do that? Well, I don't know, maybe to prolong things. But it seems like that Ukraine-Russia thing has been quite a diversion in the meantime, while China still keeps steadily marching on. And there's nothing being done to stop China, and yet Russia is the entire focus. Why is that? Well, it would appear then, and from my simple take on it, Russia doesn't pay our politicians very well. There's no money to be made. All you ever heard during the Trump presidency was Russia, he's colluding with Russia, he's getting all this stuff. And one thing I've learned about politicians, especially, whether they be in any camp, when they say something somebody else is doing, it's usually a projection because they're doing it already themselves. As we're learning, it seems like the Biden family that's running America has a deep, deep interest with China, as do a bunch of other leaders as well. Even in Canada, we've heard that there's politicians who have an interest with China. And bottom line, China pays really well and Russia doesn't. And our politicians go where the paychecks are coming. That's the bottom line. So the Chinese finally have arrived at that place where they're like, you know what? We don't give a rat's ass. We are going to tell you that we're in charge and we're going to show you our dominance. However, in my estimation, they are a paper tiger. They're not as mighty as they project themselves to be, but they are very cunning and very clever and smart, and they know how to get to the heart of our politicians, and that's through the pocketbook. Bribing them seems to work very well, as we've especially seen over the last few years, because financial interests drive these folks. It's not the welfare of their citizens that they're concerned about. Now, what can we do as ordinary citizens? Well, I would say we have to look at it and say we stop buying crap from China. We don't support them in the way we do. We can start paying more attention to what's happening in politics. You can reach out to your political leaders and say, look, hey, how are we getting more intertwined with China? They are a threat. The best thing that these politicians rely on is our lack of participation and our lack of paying attention to geopolitical events. Now, granted, I get it. Living in Canada, we got our own issues. We got things that we got to be dealing with. But when we're looking at enemies or things that are a threat to our well-being and our sovereignty outside of our borders, China is number one. Anyway, these are my thoughts. I just wanted to share them with you. I welcome your comments and thoughts as well. Please post them on, just reply to the video. You can also follow me on my Rumble on my Locals account. If you're on my Rumble's channel and you haven't subscribed, please do so. Because occasionally YouTube doesn't like what I have to say, and then they say no more. They are like sort of like the Chinese, I guess, in that way. They're a communist dictatorship. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.